Hello everyone, welcome to Even the Scales. Thank you for clicking on my video today and I hope you're all having a good day. My name's Donna and on this video I'm going to talk to you more about the 5 weeks that I spent at the Campbelltown Public Hospital, which was a year ago now, where I was set up to be taken there and held against my will for 5 weeks where I was put through extreme psychological torture. So I'm going to talk to you more about that. This is the second half of the video. I have already uploaded the first half, so you can go back and watch that if you haven't seen it yet. So on that video, I got up to the part where there had been no social distancing during the whole time that I was at that hospital. And they were actually getting people to come very close to me to invade my space just to try and make me have an emotional outburst at them. And then there was my family members. My family members did come in and see me just after I'd been admitted, and they treated me really appalling because that was all a part of the setup for them to come in and treat me with no respect and to constantly gaslight me. And they actually made me feel, they were making me feel like I was pathetic for being in the position that I was in. And, you know, it was all my fault. And it definitely wasn't. This was all a setup. And I had to actually them plead with them to bring me in the essential items that I needed just to look after myself, like shampoo and personal care items, clothing, and things like that. And I was suffering, and they were actually inflicting more emotional pain on me by the way they were treating me. I was going through so much as it was, and they were actually adding to that on purpose. And I had to plead with them to bring me in some things, and they wanted me to sign over control of my finances. So they were blackmailing me, and they were like, saying, yeah, we'll do this for you, but like you need to sign over, control of your finances because you're delusional, and we want you to do this. And I was definitely not going to do that because I knew I wasn't delusional. And there was no way I was going to give them control of my finances. They did end up bringing me in some things, but I do think that was just so they would have another chance to come back in and try and get me to sign over again. I didn't want them to go to my home because I do think I was given hallucinates in certain products that my family did give to me to use. And I didn't want them coming into my home and having a chance to be able to remove those products because I wanted to make sure that I still had them to be able to prove later on that, if I needed to, that I have been given hallucinates. And I had to order most of the things that I needed online and have them delivered to the hospital, which was so difficult. With the stress that I was going through, I felt really physically weak because of that, and it was very difficult to be able to just think straight, to be able to think what I needed and to put orders in online and everything like that. Considering what I was going through, didn't have help or support. I had no support from anyone. And I also tried reaching out to different organisations while I was in there that are meant to help people that were going through circumstances like I was. And everyone either ignored me or turned me away. And I don't know if that's because the justice system wouldn't let them help me, or if they were bribed, or I don't really know, but I couldn't get help from anyone. The social workers that I seen in there, they were in on the abuse. They would make excuses why they couldn't help me. They would create delays. And I also think that everyone in there was using fake names. And the names that they were using were designed to cause me some kind of psychological abuse, whether it be, people from my past with those names or for different reasons. But yeah, they were all using fake names. So for 2 whole weeks, I had 2 sets of clothes to wear in there. I had to keep washing these clothes over and over every day. And I was being abused every second that I was in there, not only from the patients, but from the doctors and the nurses and all the staff in there. I mean, the doctors and the nurses were just as bad as the patients as far as the abuse was, if not worse. I mean, probably worse because, I mean, these are supposed to be the carers in our society, and I was just so shocked at the way I was treated by these people. I had also had a projectile slingshotted at my car 2 days before I had been set up to be taken to the hospital. The person who slingshotted that at my car ended up turning up as a patient, as a mental health patient, while I was in there. So that was just to try and trigger me. I mean, they knew that I knew that that person had done what they had done 2 days earlier. And yeah, they wanted me to, get angry because I seen that person. They also had someone making a noise non-stop, and it sounded like a small animal was being tortured. And they were doing this over and over and over again. And like, even though I knew that it wasn't real, I knew that they were just doing this, it was still distressing to hear it because it just sounded so much like an animal was being tortured. I don't know why they were doing this, whether it was because I care about animals a lot. I care about the welfare of animals. They knew that, so they were using that as a form of psychological abuse, and it was horrible to listen to. They would also plan activities, like the social workers and people like that would come in and plan activities for everyone to take part in, and these activities were based on abuse that I went through as a child. And I'll tell you what, that's absolutely sick. I mean, I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. I really couldn't. I mean, if I'd have said anything, they would have said I was delusional, for thinking that. But I know that it was based around abuse that I went through as a child. And I know exactly why. My physical health was suffering when I was in there because of the anxiety I was going through. I do have really severe PTSD and anxiety, and I have been admitted to hospital before with anxiety attacks because my heart races and my blood pressure goes up, and it really, really does feel like I'm having a heart attack when I have one of those. I even get chest pain with them sometimes. And I was having this. I was having chest pain. I was having breathing problems. My breathing was very shallow. I had my heart rate was just so fast, um, really abnormally fast, and my blood pressure was pretty high. I think it went up to about 170. I'm not sure what it was over, but it was 170. I know the top figure was that. Um, and I really felt like I was having a heart attack or a stroke. And, this is when something like that could have actually happened to me, because I remember having this feeling like there was just like this rush of tingling go through my body. And then it was after that, that I started to feel like I couldn't control the side of my face. And it has got better now, but I'm still like really weak down the left-hand side of my body. And I still do notice that a bit there. So I really do think that I was having a serious health issue, and I was begging them, like, you need to take me to the like the medical part of this hospital. I shouldn't be in here. I should be getting the medical attention that I needed. And they did, they were coming around and taking my blood pressure and that. But as a part of the abuse, sometimes they would do the rounds with the blood pressure and that, and they would what they would do was they would go to the ward next to me, and they would always leave me to last, and they would go to all the other wards, and I would hear them, and they would be laughing and joking with the patients in the rooms, being friendly and everything. Sometimes they would just completely ignore my room, and I would have to go and ask them to take my blood pressure because I was worried. And sometimes they would leave me till last and then come into my room to take my blood pressure, and then they would just be like just um, real short with me, like they wouldn't be friendly like they were with the other patients. So I was just really noticing that that was being done on purpose, because a big part of this was for people to treat me with no respect whatsoever, like I didn't deserve respect. That was a part of the psychological abuse. Then I had to go and ask one of the nurses to take my blood pressure because I was worried about my heartbeat and my blood pressure and how I was feeling. And she actually raised her eyes at me, and she put the thing on my arm to take my blood pressure, and she didn't even put it on there properly. Like, it was all loose. Like, even I know that you've got to like put it on firmly, like to take the blood pressure properly. And she didn't even put it on properly. She was raising her eyes. Like, this is the behavior of nurses and doctors. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And yeah, she did that, and then yeah, she ended up taking it. But yeah, sometimes they would just totally avoid me because they knew that I was worried about my blood pressure. They did do ECGs on me a couple of times. I never really found out the results of those, so I still don't know if I could have had a stroke or anything in there. I'm not sure. Whoever's been coordinating this abuse throughout 2024 up until now, I think that they, were involved in setting up the abuse at the hospital too. This person is so sick and deranged. They are an expert in narcissistic abuse. They know that I've been put through a lot of narcissistic abuse throughout my life, and they are an absolute expert at it. And this person is extremely sick and deranged, just with like making a sound like an animal's being tortured, like that is just deranged. And yeah, that's been the whole theme throughout 2024, is this sick, deranged, tormentative abuse. Around day 4 or day 5 in the hospital, I got COVID, and this was deliberately given to me. It was given to me to weaken my health, to weaken my lungs, also just to, yeah, like make me feel worse than I already did. There was no isolation whatsoever for the first couple of days. Everyone knew that I had COVID. I was still allowed to walk around near all the other patients. There wasn't even any social distancing at all. I was wearing a mask. And then all of a sudden, on the second day, there was this great panic, like that they had to get me into isolation suddenly, and they started bringing me food, and I wasn't allowed out of the room. So I'm not sure why the rules changed up. This was something that happened in there quite a lot. The rules would change from day to day with different things, but yeah, I was given that COVID on purpose. I know exactly when I was given the COVID. I was offered food and I took it. And yeah, I had COVID for about 5 days. where they were bringing me my food and drinks, and I did not trust the food and drinks they were bringing me. I do believe my milk was tampered with, that I was putting on my cereal several times, because I would have these attacks where I'd need to go to the toilet, like after I would eat my breakfast, and which was out of the ordinary. And I believe they were laughing about that and thinking that it was funny. And I mean, it would be quite easy for them to, syringe something into the little individual bottles of milk that you get in hospital. I do think they were putting something in those to make me do that, just to embarrass me, to make things worse. And the nurse that did that was very, very abusive. That person was the most abusive person the whole time I was in there. That person was just carrying out like disgusting abuse, like really bad. My rights were not given to me until the 6th day I was in there, and I really had no idea about anything that was going on. It was all new to me. I'd never been in a mental health ward before, but it was the 6th day before they even bought me my rights. And after I read those, I realised that they were only supposed to keep me there for up to 3 days at a time. And I was supposed to be seeing a doctor every 24 hours, which definitely wasn't happening. Sometimes it was up to a week in between seeing a doctor. And every single right that could possibly be violated on the list of rights of a mental health patient was totally violated in every way. The meals that I was being given, I am a mostly vegetarian. I do eat like fish. That is all I eat. I don't eat chicken. I don't eat any red meat whatsoever. And I kept telling the nurses and the cooks that, I would like to have, substitute meals, and that I only ate vegetables and fish. And they kept serving me up red meat on purpose. Like I would get to my turn and there would only be red meat at the kitchen. But the thing was, there were people that come in after me as patients, and there was also one woman who just decided to suddenly turn vegan because she's seen I was a vegetarian, and they were actually giving those two women special substitute meals with different kind of meat substitutes, and they were deliberately leaving me out, and they would just continually keep serving these two women up proper vegetarian meals or vegan meals, and I would just always get to the kitchen and there would always just be red meat meals for me. So it took until I was there 5 weeks. It took until 4.5 weeks after I'd been there to actually start getting vegetarian meals served up to me. And yet other people were coming in after me and they weren't having any problem. Yeah, so I was supposed to be seeing a doctor once a day, once a day. But I was only seeing a doctor sometimes it would be up to a week. I would be waiting on a doctor and they would just make excuses like, well, you're in a public hospital, but that wasn't on the patient rights form that they handed me. That is not normal procedure as far as those rights were concerned. And when the doctors did finally come in, they would always make me wait till last to be seen. And, they'd see patients one at a time. They would make me wait to be last. And then sometimes, I think there was one occasion where, I would get my hopes up that I was finally going to see a doctor after a week. and then they made me wait till last, but then they said, no, the doctor's gone home. You have to wait till next time. So I had waited, already a week, then all day everyone had gone in ahead of me, and then they had just made up an excuse why the doctor couldn't see me. So it was all just to try and trigger me. That's why that was being done. The psychiatrist that I seen in there wanted to start me on antipsychotic medication because, yeah, she said, like, you were delusional when you were brought in. We feel like you are a danger to yourself or others, so we want you on these antipsychotics. And I read, about the things that these antipsychotics can do, the side effects and things like that, and I didn't want to take them. For one, I wasn't delusional because my home is bugged and there are smells coming into my home. Right up until today, this is definitely happening. And, they were trying to say that I was delusional, and that was why I had to be on these tablets. And I didn't want to take them because they could have caused me heart issues. And, I was having problems around my heartbeat and my breathing and, very serious things. And the tablets also cause falls as well. They can make you fall over. And they were actually leaving wet puddles on the floor, or they were mopping the floor and not putting wet floor signs up and things like that, just in the hope that I would have a fall. There were other patients there that were on medications that could cause them to have a fall. They actually had signs on their door saying that this patient is a high-risk fall patient. They did not have one of them on my door. I did start taking the medication because I just thought, I'm going to do anything to get out of here. So I started taking it. I just done what they said, even though I was so scared for my health taking it. I just had to take that risk because I just had to do what I was told to get out of there. And as soon as I come home, I went off that medication. I didn't need it. I wasn't psychotic to start with. They also did blood tests while I was in there. Now, my iron had been low before I went in the hospital, and it was low when I come out of the hospital. Low iron can cause confusion and it can cause shortness of breath, which is exactly what I was having in the hospital. They took a blood test when I was in the hospital, and I'd also had a brain scan done just a few days before, and I kept asking them for the results of those tests. I think it took them about 2 weeks to bring me the results of those tests. When they brought me the blood test, they handed me this sheet of paper with the blood results, and this piece of paper didn't even have my name on it. It was just a sheet of paper with all these results on it. It said everything was normal, but it didn't even have my name on it or my date of birth or anything like that. So there was nothing to prove that that was even my blood test, but I don't think I was supposed to notice that. So yeah, if I was having any confusion before I went to hospital, and the fact that I was having shortness of breath, it could have very well been my iron because I was having that before and after I come out of the hospital. And they were trying to cause me breathing issues. There was that really abusive male nurse that I just told you about. He would come into my room, or even in the kitchen area, he would come and stand behind me, and he would wear the most overpowering aftershave, and to the point where it would take over the whole ward. Like, you could be anywhere in that ward and you would be able to smell that aftershave. And he would come and stand right behind me when I was eating my breakfast, to the point where I'd have to get up and move because I could literally, it would just take over. Like, you could taste it and everything. Like, that's how disgusting it was. And I complained about that because this is a hospital. Like, sort of thing should not be happening in a hospital. But they were doing this to try and affect my breathing. They were even just going to outside of my room through the night and through the day, and just spraying aftershave around the corridor so that when I walked through the corridor, I would smell it. And then all the nurses and a lot of the male nurses and female nurses started wearing really strong aftershave and really, really strong perfume just to try and affect my breathing, because they knew that it did offend me, like when I smelt it so strong in the hospital. And like those two things just didn't go together, like a hospital and just a nurse wearing this overpowering aftershave. Like it just did not make sense. And anything that I would speak up about, they would do more because they were trying to trigger me. So yeah, they were trying to affect my breathing. They were allowing me to have things in my room that a normal mental health patient should never be allowed to have. I mean, if I was a danger to myself or others, I should definitely not have been allowed to have these things in my room. And another thing I want to point out too, if the organisation that I called for help on the first day when I got taken to the hospital, if they thought that, it was so serious that I needed an ambulance to be taken to the hospital, that they were worried about me harming myself, why did it take the ambulance half an hour to travel 10 minutes away? If I was, that much of an emergency, why did it take that long for them to arrive? It's like they were just taking their time, in case I did take my life, and they were just showing up, perhaps thinking they were going to find me that way. So the things that they let me have in the room were, they let me have like drawstrings in the pants that I had on. They let me have shoelaces in my shoes. They let me have hand sanitizer in my room. And this is something that I found out when I was in there, that they usually take away from mental health patients because a lot of alcoholics actually drink it. So, yeah, you're not allowed to have that in your room. I did have COVID. So, I was glad that I was able to have that sanitizer in my room. But the thing is, they shouldn't have allowed me to have it. They were letting me do my craft and things like that. I think it was about the 4th or 5th week, I was allowed to come home and pick up some stuff so that I had things to do in the hospital. And I did pick up some crafts that, I had to hand back in to the nurses when I had finished with them. But they were allowing me to have scissors in my room, and I don't think that's something that they should have been allowing a mental health patient that was a danger to themselves to have at all. They were also allowing me to have glass containers that could have been easily smashed and used as, cutting items. They were also allowing me to have razors in my room, and also plastic bags. So yeah, there was all those things that I don't think that they should have been letting me have, but I think they were letting me have them because they were hoping that I would take my life. They were trying to make me take my life. That's what they were trying to do. That's what the whole thing was being done for. And yeah, I couldn't believe the behaviour of these doctors and nurses. There was one nurse, she was actually mocking my mannerisms, and she didn't, she had no shame about doing it or anything like that. She would come and take my blood pressure, and she would be actually mocking my mannerisms as she was doing it. It was so weird. I couldn't believe the behaviour of these doctors and nurses. The linen in the hospital was really, really disgusting. It was really hard to find linen that didn't smell, that didn't have a blood stain on it. I would go to change my sheets and things like that, and I would be there at the linen press, and I would maybe, go through 3 or 4 sets of pillowcases and sheets, just trying to find one that didn't stink or have a blood stain on it. I mean, they'd been washed, but they still stunk and they still had stains on them. I mean, what kind of environment is that for a mental health patient to try and heal, to be dealing with things like that? And they put me right out. My room was right next to the linen press too. And when I would go to put the sheets on my bed and I would, spread them out to put them on the bed, I would just see the dust come out of them. So they had me near the linen press, like hoping that it was going to affect my breathing, because it was a high traffic area too. Like there was constantly people going to the linen press, stirring the dust up. The whole place, when I say it was designed like an Area 51, it was designed in a way where this kind of thing could be carried out. It was designed in a way where people could leave and come onto the ward without me knowing, because there was all these different entrances and they were at the other end, like away from my room. So it was easy for people to sneak in and out of a night and things like that. I think that a lot of these fake patients were actually going home overnight, and the nurses and doctors were just, like pretending like they were in the rooms when they were going around doing the checks. I think a lot of them were going home and then coming back in like just really early in the morning, ready to abuse again. It was designed in a way that could allow people to do that. In the end, they knew that they had to let me out soon, so they resorted to scaring me, and they would start carrying out these um, scenarios through the night where they would wake me up from my sleep and scare me with scratching sounds, growling sounds, ghostly sounds, soft voices over the PA. They were doing that to try and make me believe that I was hearing voices. They did that quite a few times, and they would do it like through the night or really early in the morning to scare me. But near the end, it got worse. They started carrying out abuse, and they started getting desperate because they knew that they had to let me out soon and they had to hurry up and, cause me a mental health episode. So they were really trying very hard. And it was the doctors and the nurses mostly that were doing this kind of thing. They would interfere with my sleep a lot. They would try and get me to take sleeping tablets, and I didn't want to have the sleeping tablets. I don't usually take sleeping tablets. I don't like how they make me feel like the morning after you've had them. So I was trying to avoid taking them. But what they were doing, because they knew that, I didn't like them, they would wait till I fell asleep, and then they would deliberately wake me up at about 12 o'clock so that I would have a sleeping tablet. So that's what they were doing. They were deliberately waking me up through the night just to disturb my sleep so that, the next day I would be lacking sleep and I would be even more vulnerable to having an outburst or a mental health episode. They were just doing everything that they could. So, yeah, they were creating these they were carrying out these scare tactics through the night. I knew it was them, though. I knew what they were doing. I knew that it wasn't real. There was one night there just before I went home where they carried out this setup. I woke up at like 3 o'clock in the morning and there was two nurses outside my door. They had flooded out the room across from me. There was water just absolutely everywhere. They had done this on purpose. And these two nurses were mopping it all up, and, it was bedlam, it was chaos, and they were trying to stop the flooding. The water was like just about to come under my door into my room, and it was all just done to wake me up and to cause me stress. There was no real flooding or anything like that. I don't even think they said that the woman in the room across from me had actually done that, because she's a mental health patient. They said that she had gone in the shower and left the water on and done it, but that was done on purpose for sure. And yeah, it was just to wake me up and disturb my sleep. So yeah, I was being abused all day, every day. The cruelness of these people was just unbelievable, how cruel they were. And yeah, they could see my phone, which I said earlier. They could see my phone and they were watching me in my room on camera as well. So yeah, a lot of the abuse they were basing on, the stuff I was doing in my room and doing on my phone. They would mock those things when I come out into the common area and things like that. The really abusive nurse that was wearing the aftershave, he was body shaming me. He was getting everyone to weigh themselves in front of each other at breakfast time when he was on duty. And he was doing this because I was losing a lot of weight at the time, and he was trying to body shame me because of that. So he would get me to weigh myself, and just to make me look anorexic or something like that. I wasn't anorexic, I was just losing a lot of weight. I had been waiting on a health procedure to be carried out on me, which was actually prolonged throughout 2023. So I had to wait over a year to have that procedure done. And yeah, I did lose a lot of weight because of that. So yeah, he was body shaming me. He would get, like, that's something that should never happen. Like, he was getting everyone to weigh themselves before breakfast, like we were cattle or something like that. And he would say how much everyone weighed, out loud, and yeah, whether they'd lost weight or whatever. So yeah, that shouldn't have been being done. It was all a part of body shaming. Doctors and nurses that are meant to be carers in our society were doing this. Was so inappropriate. It was beyond inappropriate. It was beyond that. There were people that were actually shifting the lock on my bathroom door so that I would get the blame for locking it, because it was the kind of lock that if you left it in a certain position and then you accidentally shut the door, you would have to go and get the nurses to come and unlock the door for you. And they were doing that on purpose. They were shifting the lock without my knowledge so that I would shut the door and then I would have to go get the nurses to come and unlock it. So that would make me look incompetent. They were carrying out setups with all different things, but there was one where I would be preparing my washing, and especially when I only had two outfits to use for that 2 weeks, I would have to wash my outfit every day, and I would try and get to the laundry really early so that I could, have an outfit. And what they would do was they would see me getting ready to do my washing, so they would quickly get someone to go to the laundry and put their washing in before me. Then, once I did get to do my washing, they would, you weren't supposed to touch anyone's washing. Only the owner of the washing was supposed to get it out of the machine. And what they would do was they would get to my washing as soon as it ended, and they would get someone to put it in the dryer. They would beat me to it. I would get there and they would say, yeah, well, so-and-so had to put their washing in, so we had to move yours into the dryer. And, the rules would change every day anyway. So I just went along with it. But why they were doing that is because they weren't emptying the lint filter on the dryer. So that if a fire broke out, I would look like the incompetent one for not emptying the lint filter. So I was making sure that I got to that washing machine every time my washing finished the cycle so that I could put my own washing into the dryer. But they were deliberately watching for that cycle to end so that they could put it into the dryer with the lint filter, absolutely chock-a-block full of lint, because they wanted to start a fire. They were trying to, so that I would look incompetent, and they could keep me there so that I would look like I'm not competent of looking after myself or making decisions. The laundry area was absolutely filthy. It was like the cleaners didn't clean it. No one cleaned it. It probably never been cleaned because it was just like a case of you know, everyone's saying that's not my responsibility. So the laundry was absolutely really filthy. They've obviously done this to people before because of how severe the abuse was I was being put through. They've obviously done it to people before, and they were confident about what they were doing to me. They, you know, I don't think they ever thought that I would ever be getting out of that hospital. So they, you know, they thought they were safe to just do whatever they liked. They've done this to people before. They've put them in hospital. They've made them look crazy or made them go crazy. And I wasn't meant to make it out of that hospital. They had to let me out in the end because they just couldn't cause me to have an emotional outburst or a breakdown or anything. They just couldn't do it. So they had to let me out. They had no choice. And then I think they thought, well, we're going to let her out. And then, you know, we've got more chance of getting to her outside. And then when they did let me out, the abuse, oh my God, the abuse I was going through. That's why I had to start making these videos. It was so severe. They were carrying out the noise attacks. Just about everyone that lived around me was involved. They were all abusing me at once. Different organisations I was using, you know, for services. Just about every single one of them was involved in carrying out delays, abuse, things like that. Also, when I was in there, I was supposed to see I was only supposed to be in there for 3 working days, but then they said, no, we've got to keep you here because we think you're a danger to yourself or others because you're delusional. So they made me wait to go before the tribunal. They said it was for my own safety and the safety of others, but it was so unfair. I had to sit through a hearing. That was at the 2.5 week mark. I'd been there 2.5 weeks. I had spoken to a representative from Legal Aid that was going to come out on the day and represent me at the hearing. And she turned up 5 minutes before the hearing. So I had no chance to tell her anything about what I had been going through. I mean, what can I tell her in 5 minutes? And I mean, she wasn't really interested in anything I'd gone through. It was so unfair. I did not get a fair hearing at all. The psychiatrist was just, you know, she'd made up her mind. The judge had made up their mind. The legal aid person was just, yeah, she said a few things on my behalf, but it was nothing that was really going to help me get out of that place. So what they did was they were able to say that they could keep me there for up to another month at the 2.5 week mark. And I was just devastated. I mean, I had no one, no family to help me. And, you know, I could have been there for up to another month. But luckily, they kept me there for only another 2.5 weeks. They let me out after that. But yeah, that hearing was rigged. It was. And yeah, then when I got out, the abuse was just so bad. What I went through in the months after that, that's why I had to start making these videos. Otherwise, I wasn't sure if I'd even make it this far. I had to do it to protect myself because there was no one else to help. The police are involved. I now know that the landlord was involved where I lived, so there was nothing I could do about the people around me that were involved in trying to harm me and still are, some of them. So, yeah, that's about it. So if you've listened to this video to the end, thank you so much. And if you can, I'd really appreciate it if you could share the video or like the video. It would just help it to circulate out there on YouTube. And tell your friends, your family members, you know, what's happened here, because They have obviously done this to people in the past, and they're going to keep getting away with doing it to people in the future. I mean, this is all being done as a cover-up by the justice system, and the health system have worked with them to do this, and a lot of other organisations as well. So, yeah, once again, thank you very much for listening, and I will talk to you on the next one. Bye for now, and God bless.